So, you want to replace the U joints in your Corvette in the rear axles. Do you? Do you really want to try and do that? Because I just did that. And I'm glad you found my video. Now, I don't have any videos or any pictures on how to do this because there are like 4 or 5 videos which show exactly everything you need to see. However, I am going to tell you all the problems I encountered, which was not in those videos. So, this could possibly be the most important video that you watch. So, don't cut out, stick around, okay? If you're going to do this job, okay? So, number one thing that was weird is that when you look underneath a Corvette, you don't see any obvious jacking points. So, there are a bunch of videos. You should go take a look at it. But the key is that just in front of the wheel well, you'll see that there are a bunch of they call them there's pinch welds, which means there's actually just vertical metal going up and down. And in one of the places, you'll see there's like a T. Okay, so you want to put your jack underneath that spot where you see it making that T, okay? And if you have a convertible, there's like a gigantic X bar support underneath there as well, but that T joint area is still exposed. So things about jacking up your car. So you have to be safe. You can be killed by this job. The Corvette has practically no clearance underneath the car. So you will be crushed if your system fails. So get a real floor jack, okay? The jack that comes with your car is only meant to lift up your tires about this much, okay? Get real jack stands, okay? Do not support your car on things like cinder blocks or your firewood or whatever you happen to have lying around, okay? Once again, if that fails, you will die, okay? So get jack stands, get wheel chocks. When you if you're gonna you have to lift up the entire back end in order to do this, and you have to do this with the brakes off. So obviously, you need wheel chocks in the front to make sure that your car does not roll forward. Okay. So once again, don't be cheap on that. And but you might want to use those things, I don't know, as kind of a backup. But you kind of got to imagine that whatever that you're using to support your car, just imagining that fail and have something there else to catch your car just to be safe. Okay. Now I would say that this job is extremely, extremely difficult. Okay. If there was ever a job that you want to pay a mechanic for because it's completely nasty, this would be it. Okay. Just let me tell you, it took like 3 attempts over 3 different days of at least 6 hours apiece to try and get this thing done, which is one thing you don't get from these other videos. They don't tell you just how incredibly difficult this job is. Okay. But I'm going to tell you. Okay. So once you get your car, your wheels off, you got your car, rear of your car jacked up. What you want to do is that you have to go in and get an 18-inch extension so you can get in there far enough, plus at least 2 other 6-inch extensions. At least that's what I use. The other thing is that you really do need to get a proper 5/16 inch deep socket with a 3/8 inch attachment that you can use with your regular bars. Now, I tried going in there with the 5/16 inch socket that comes with my standard socket tool set, and I just cracked it. It just you have to use a heck of a lot of force in order to undo those bolts that are down there near the differential. And so you need to have the proper socket. So just go ahead and buy that. All right. Don't try and use the one that's in your socket set that only has a 1/4 inch drive. That's just not going to work. And the other thing is that in order to get enough torque onto that thing, you have to really brace it against something. So I just braced the extensions right against the rotor so that when you twist, see, the problem is if you twist and it's not braced against anything, your wrench is going to just twist around. You're not going to be able to get enough torque on it. But, so you just rest it right on the rotor and then go, push, pull, push. And then you can do that. Yeah, it takes a lot of torque to get that thing off. Okay. Another little trick is that I had my jack handle, and you can actually kind of stick that on the end of your 12-inch ratchet, and you can get a lot of more extra torque that way, okay? Because to get these bolts off, you need a lot of torque, and I use PB Blaster, which is a bolt loosener, so I did manage to get them off, so I soaked them like a week previous, and then right before I did it, and then at least I was able to get those bolts off. And this is not easy. I mean, literally between getting the tools and coming back, blah blah, it took me like 2 or 3 hours to get off, these 8 bolts. So, and that was a whole day's work just right there, just getting those 8 bolts out of there. And on the wheel side, there's barely any clearance to get the socket in there. When you try and get the socket in there, you'll see it kind of, you have to rotate the wheel around in order to get the bolt in position. But even then, it's not straight on. And this is another reason why you have to get both wheels off the ground, because in a Corvette, due to the differential, even if you put and of course you want to do this, you want to put the your automatic transmission into neutral, but even when it's in neutral, both wheels spin. So even if you only have to do one side, you have to put up the other side, because you will not be able to get the wheel to spin, because it forces the other wheel on the other side to spin. And if the other wheel is on the ground, you can't spin it at all. Okay, so that's the other reason why you get both your wheels off the ground. So assuming that you got all of the bolts off of this thing, then these videos show just the drive shaft just kind of just falls out. It's like, no, mine didn't. Okay, for some reason on the wheel side, mine was like rust welded onto the yoke. Right, you could barely pull it, and this is the other thing, just getting this drive shaft out. It's like a puzzle, right? Because it's just like no clearance, and it's like you got to turn the wheel and I don't know, take out the caps on these U joints, and just somehow, I mean, I couldn't describe it. Somehow it manages just to fall, to get loose. Okay, but on the other side, totally stuck. I mean, I was sitting there, I was trying to use a crowbar, I was trying to get a hammer in there. The problem with that U joint is that it's kind of surrounded by the whole hub, so you can't really get in there. And so I spent, hours trying to get this thing loose by using screwdrivers and hammers and anything I could jam in there. I'm still not even 100% sure how I managed to finally get it loose. I got a big crowbar, standard crowbar, and I think somehow I managed to get in behind the U joint, and then that popped it free. Although once again, when you go in there and you take a look, you see it's a complete puzzle, right? But that may or may not happen to you. But just be aware that those U joints can get totally stuck in there, and you just can't get them out. Okay, so that took like another whole day just to figure out how to get that axle out of the car. Okay, now the videos show that you have to remove the tie rod end, and but there was a video said that you could do it without removing the tie rod end, which I initially tried. And in fact, you can do it. In fact, you can get the entire drive shaft out of the car without ever having to take that thing off. But the deal is that you do need to do that in order to get enough clearance to stick it back in, right? Because there's just like zero tolerance. There's like no clearance between the two yokes, between the differential and the wheel, that there's just that fits exactly, right? And if there's that fits exactly, then there's just no way you're going to be able to get this. I mean, when you look at it, it's like it looks impossible. It looks completely impossible. And even when you take out that tie rod, it still looks impossible, right? So, and I had some other problems, which is that, I couldn't on the driver's side get those two caps to fit inside. There's like a retainer. When you look in there, there's like a retainer and it has to be inside. But no matter what I did, it just would not go in there. So I just tried to, Yeah, well, the other annoying thing is that when you're trying to stick this drive shaft in with these caps, the caps, they just fall off. I mean, you'll be doing that, then a cap will just fall off. And so what I tried to do is I tried to put more grease inside those caps, and that helped that problem somewhat, but it turns out that sometimes you have to go ahead and take out the caps just so you can get enough clearance to get it in there. And once again, I can't describe how that exactly works, but you may find yourself needing to do that. But it seemed that every single time I tried to do something, a cap would come off. It's just maddening. And this is the hardest part about putting this whole thing back together. But one thing I did find is that, I had taken off the cap, and when I looked inside of it, it's like there's these little needle bearings in there. They're just like paper clips, pieces of paper clip on their end, and there's nothing holding them in place other than a thin layer of grease. And they can fall over and they can get out. You can lose them, right? Because there's nothing holding these things in. In fact, there's nothing holding these caps in. You'd think that you stick it in and then it would snap into something, but no, they just come right off. And there's these little bearings that are sitting inside. They can all just fall down. I found that one of the bearings had fallen down and it was stuck to the shaft. So I had to go carefully use a little pig and put the bearing back up and stick it around and then stick it in. And then I had the clearance. But even then, you'll find that you can't get it to seat the whole way, right? So the best you can do is to get it just on the lip. You got to get it just, if you get it that very bit on the lip, then you can put the strap on, then you can tighten it down, then it will go the whole way. All right. This is something that might drive you crazy, that you cannot seat the cap fully. The reason for that is because when you release that tie rod end, it gave you a little bit of extra wiggle room, which you need in order to get that thing back in. But once you tighten it up, then that actually brings that wheel hub back in. So when you initially release the bolt, you've got that all loosened up, you'll see that the thing will swing out. And in fact, if you try and get the tie rod in while it's swinged out, it's really difficult. It just you can't do it. Right? Only after you have all the straps loosened will the tie rod end actually line up with the hole that it goes into, right? And the other thing that I found is that the tie rod end, it kind of just rotates freely. So you kind of figure, how are you supposed to tighten the castle nut on something that rotates freely? But if you get it in there and you start tightening it, apparently there's enough friction in there so that it doesn't rotate around the whole way. Okay, so let's see here. Now, as far as getting the actual U-joints out, so presuming you managed to get the whole shaft out of there, and I kind of skipped ahead by kind of describing some of the problems I had getting it back in there. But there's another puzzle, which is how to drive out the U-joints, which now some people have shown driving out a U-joint, say using the C-clamp that comes from this kit that I rented from my auto parts store. But generally speaking, I tried that and it just kind of slips all over the place, and you can't get enough force onto that U-joint to press it out using any kind of C-clamp. So what the other videos show is that you put a big large socket on the bottom and a socket on the top and you hammer it away. Well, I didn't have any of that stuff. So what I did is I took a 2x4 and I drilled a 1.5 inch hole through it with my paddle bit, and then I rested the yoke of the universal joint over the hole, and then I put a regular spark plug wrench socket over the top, and I hit it with a hammer. And I found that gently hitting it with the hammer like this didn't make very much progress. So what I ended up doing was I just set the socket down on the thing, and then I just gave it just a big whack. And then my socket and everything goes flying, but it did actually drive the U-joint down, okay? Because you got to get a lot of impact in order to get those things driven through, okay? No little gentle tamping is going to work, right? Not until you drive at least, at least out of the axle, and then maybe you can start, then I could start holding it and hitting it with a reasonable amount of pressure. But the first few whacks, yeah, I was like, Gah! Yeah. You have to do that, and like I said, it's quite exciting, and everything goes fine, but it does drive out the shaft. Okay, so so I've covered like that, and I've started to describe, how difficult it was to get this thing back in, and so this is kind of what I did. And I don't exactly remember what I did because it was so difficult getting. It's nearly impossible. It took hours to try and get it so that the caps would sit inside the retainers, right? And even getting the shaft in that position is a difficult part. So I think what I did is that you got to get the shaft up there. There is some clearance out there so that you can get the wheel side in. But presuming you've got the wheel side in, you want to make sure that your yoke is positioned straight up and down, so the caps top and bottom. And then you want to get, and once again, it's a puzzle. You may have to take off the caps or something like that. You need to get the axle sitting on top, and you'll see that it won't gently fall down, right? It's just not enough clearance. So, but once you got it sitting sort of on top, then you can go pull the hub some more to give it some space, and then that axle will just somehow magically fall down in place. Okay. So once it's in there, then you can go ahead and stick the other cap back on, and then try and push it up and try and get it kind of on there. And like I said, you're not going to be able to get it on there the whole way, right? Just got to get it in the inside of those retainers, and then you're going to put the straps on. Put them on kind of loosely and spin it around so that, you get it on loosely. So it's just so that it doesn't pop out of those retainers when you turn it around. Turn it around, and it's not easy to turn around these tires. If you're grabbing hold of the rotor, it's like, it's a huge struggle to turn it around. Sometimes I'd go around the other side, grab the whole wheel and turn that. That was easier. And it's difficult. Okay. And so presuming you got those straps on, so once you got the straps on, you get them tight. I couldn't figure out how you torque them down to 25 foot-pounds, but there's just no way I could get a torque wrench in underneath the car. So, you may find that's difficult, or maybe that's another reason why it'd be good to put it on a complete jack stand so you can actually reasonably work underneath there. But it's one of the most nastiest jobs you could ever do. You'll be underneath your car, and it's very difficult to get from underneath to outside of your car. You'll be grinding your head against the dirt. Things will be falling down on your face. It's dirty. It's nasty. It's one of the most horrible jobs I've ever tried to do. Okay. So I think, though, I have given you all of the hints and the problems that I encountered. And so I did one side, and at some point I imagine I'm going to be doing the other side. And if I do, I'll at least have this video to refer back to remind me of all the terrible things it took to get this stupid U-joint changed. I mean, I think it's a very expensive job. It's something like, like $600. And believe me, it would be worth it. Okay. But just because there are things you cannot describe. When you get there, when you look at this thing, you'll go, it's impossible, can't be done. But and yet, you'll sit there. It can be done. It just takes hours and hours of futzing. It's like this for 3 hours straight. It's a great exercise, but it's quite frustrating. Okay, so but that will do it for this video. I'm sorry if it was very long, but like I said, it's the most important video you'll ever see if you ever attempt to try and do this job on your own. So good luck and be safe.